David, I was fascinated to hear about you and Rosa and going on your scuba diving adventure. I'm so enthralled with these risky adventures that you go on.
Well, we've been in the pool. Now we're headed to the lake, John. So the lake is the big deal.
Craig, I know you're a bit of a rugged adventurer yourself. Have you done any of that recently? Anything like that?
No, not for a while. I actually sold my truck. I had that like off-road overlanding thing I built out over a few years, and I just got rid of it this year.
So we've been for truck racing then.
No, not for a while. I saved all the stuff that goes to it, but yeah, I'm gonna build something better, I think, next time.
Awesome.
Does that mean you have to move, Craig? I'm not sure you can live in that area of Massachusetts without a big truck.
I know. When David came out here to film with Moving America's Soul, I took him for a ride to this like iconic hot dog place, and Dave gets in the front and he goes, "All right, here we go. I'm going to get a hot dog with Mad Max."
All right, well let's get this podcast going, John Draper.
Let's do it.
Welcome aboard Lifelines with David and John, your guide to charting the transformative course of crisis intervention and the game-changing 988 Lifeline.
Hey there. Well, welcome back to Lifelines, the 988 podcast with my friend Brooklyn. And we are so thrilled to have our an inspiration to us both and a friend, Craig Miller, with us today. Craig, you have in so many ways shaped our understanding of lived experience and the opportunities. And you were mentioning the work we did together on the documentary. John, tell us a little bit about our guest today.
Our distinguished guest today, Craig Miller, is a suicide prevention advocate, outstanding public speaker, author, artist, and all-around impressive human being. Craig's published this book in 2012 that was called This Is How It Feels, and it details his recovery journey through childhood trauma, OCD, and a serious suicide attempt. And it's one of the most moving and enduring memoirs on the subject of finding a life worth living that you'll ever read. Craig's partial story has also been included in major suicide prevention documentaries such as The S Word in 2017, and most recently, Moving America's Soul on Suicide, which was released earlier this year to major acclaim. So today, Craig has new chapters in his life journey that I can't wait to hear about, and I don't have to, because the man is here with us now. Welcome, Craig.
Well, thanks, John. I appreciate that a lot. Thanks for having me.
So, Craig, we usually start out with trying to get a little bit of a sense for our audience of the person and their life. And the first thing we do is something we call the super fan segment.
All right.
So I don't know if I'm going to be a super fan of scuba diving, John. That's going to yet play out. John, share with Craig something you're a super fan of.
Well, I'm a super fan of fine cuisine here in New York City, and I'm looking forward to having a lot of good meals this weekend.
So we both got a blank piece of paper here, Craig, and we're going to write down what we think you're a super fan of, and you're going to tell us if either one of us got it right or was in the ballpark or really cold, right? So, John,
all right, there you go.
What do you think? What is Craig Miller a super fan of? Okay, I'm just going to write down real quick.
And I want to warn you, Craig, in the past, occasionally David has done some really elaborate pictures.
I didn't have time today.
Yeah, he didn't have time today to do this. So,
all right, let's see what John Draper. We'll see what you think.
All right, here we go.
Photography. Well, that's a little bit of cheating, but is that fair, Craig? Are you a super fan of photography?
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
All right,
I'm a super fan.
Not bad, but let's see.
But I'm fans of other things too.
Yeah.
It's a little bit. My thunder was stolen by Craig right from the get-go. I could never have seen that coming. I say he's a super fan of Hot Dog Annie's.
Oh my gosh, that's great. That's great.
Did you see him do that just now? It's incredible.
These are hot dogs. These are onions, chili, all on the dogs, and then a root beer and a bag of potato chips.
That's absolutely it.
Craig, Hot Dog Annie's is in Leicester.
That's called, no, you got it. You got it right on. Leicester.
Lester, yeah.
And somewhere in there, you
Right,
hit
like
it, you hit it
Worcester,
right.
it's Lester, David. That's not Worcester or not
That
Leicester.
was that was such a great day, Craig.
Yeah, it was. It was awesome. It's funny I brought that up too, huh?
Yeah, it's so funny because I had prepared that and like, Craig got me right out of the cage.
No, that made it even better.
Hey, John, this podcast is brought to us by Behavioral Health Link. So, Craig, John and I are coming from different places, but the heart of this program is in Atlanta, Georgia, with the work that BHL does. And we bring these podcasts every week. You can watch us, like and subscribe. We hope you will on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. But, John, say a word about our sponsor, and then we're going to get into it with our friend Craig Miller.
Happy to, David. Few people have told the story of what persons in suicidal crisis need to recover better than our guest today. And one of the many things we know that they need is for crisis workers to understand and communicate their story privately and securely to people who are supporting them across the care continuum. And BHL's platform, David, it assures that private air traffic control-like communications are reliable and secure in their transmission across all systems encountering the person in crisis, integrating the person's care from the call center to any mobile crisis, follow-up, outpatient, and inpatient care needs that they may have. The platform consolidates a continuous case record so the individual doesn't have to repeat their story to every person who's helping them, and each professional has a clear picture of that individual's personalized care needs. BHL can be your system's communications partner too in delivering top quality coordinated care. Just visit behavioralhealthlink.com to learn more. David.
Thank you, John. And Craig, our first discussion in the podcast is always the good news. And we've had some news this past week that so I had the privilege, John, to go to the Kennedy Forum's Alignment for Progress event in Washington, D.C. the last couple of days. And there was a lot of discussion around the news that overdose deaths have declined 10, 15%. Some are saying it's greater than that in the latest reporting. And that's the first time we've seen that kind of a bend in the outcomes in years and years and years. So while it is obviously still an enormous challenge for the United States, the deaths by overdose for the first time are starting to level some.
David, how many lives is that? I mean, these aren't just percentages. We're talking about tens of thousands.
Again, what I saw this morning was 10% plus for sure is the reduction. But there was one individual saying we're seeing impacts that are 2 to 3 times that even. We'll have discussions of 50,000 suicide deaths in this country, but typically the discussion of overdose deaths is twice that. So, John, we could be talking about 10 or 20 or 30,000 lives, right. But the main thing is that, okay, we're starting to have an impact. So, what is causing that reduction? Right. Is it the distribution of naloxone? Is it better administration of medication-assisted treatment and accessibility? Is it something going on in society that's caused that to slow and start to decline? John, Craig, what are your thoughts?
Well, that was actually going to be my question, is what are they attributing it to? I would love to figure that out. So I kind of went through, a similar situation in my own health where I kind of wish I had done it one step at a time, and I didn't. I just threw everything at it and things improved. I don't know which thing did the improving. Could have been all of them, but I really think one was probably stronger than the other. And I wonder in this situation and with things, even anything we address like this, any type of public health crisis, like when there's an improvement, I wonder what we could really do to put a lot more effort into the process of gauging that improvement and tracking it and seeing it and visualizing it and having some real data at the end of it.
It's an interesting point, Craig, because, what we know when we're in a crisis is we throw everything at it. And, it's not scientific necessarily. What's scientific is what's the outcome, but you don't know what's causing the outcome. But what we also find often is it's a confluence of things, and the very culture that says we need to throw everything at it is the culture that's saying we also need to publicly message about it. And I think there's some messaging around this too. Mm-hmm. So for example, every time a doctor or somebody is going to be prescribing an opioid, if they hand them some naloxone too, some Narcan, and say, by the way, a lot of people become addicted to this and die. And so just in case, here's this. So the kind of taking that prescription and say, oh, this is great for my pain, is now messaged with, dude, you could get addicted and you could die very easily. And so here's something to keep you from doing that. I think even the possession of the naloxone is a message that says.
That's interesting, John. You know, Patrick Kennedy was talking about, we should also be asking about a person's family history of addiction and challenges that might have already been going on in the family. So we've got this double challenge of pain in the United States is an issue and having support. But, you know, can we develop drugs that are not as addictive and dangerous? Craig, what would it mean if we had a report come out that we had bent the curve on suicide deaths? Which we haven't had that report, not in my lifetime.
No.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that would be, I mean, I hope we would have to start from the beginning, right? And to be able to collect enough data that we get to the end and we had a report worth understanding.
I mean, you know,
is that happening?
No, but the only time I've ever
you're
seen that
right,
happen,
the data trails so much that it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I think the only time we've ever seen significant impacts in suicide reductions in nations has been through major efforts to reduce access to lethal means.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a law or a policy or something that that eliminates carbon monoxide gases from people's homes, as we saw in the UK, it significantly reduced suicides. If you put very difficult caps to remove on poisons, as they did in China, it significantly reduced suicide. But to your point, there was one thing that was done, so it made it easier.
Right.
It may be a confluence of things that need to be done here in the United States.
And I wonder, though, I'm all for reducing the means and taking care of that and 100%. But part of me, having been in situations like this, something needs to be done immediately after that, right? So and a lot of people don't know about it. So let's say someone goes into crisis and they go for what they thought their means were, and it's not there, or it's gone, or they can't, and they have to continue to the next day. They're likely not going to tell anybody that they did that. They're likely not going to talk to people and tell them that they got that close. And so that the peak of what they went through the night before stays with them, and to let that to reduce that on your own is nearly impossible, and it takes so much work. And then what happens with it? They look for other means. They think of other ideas. They think of other ways, and it's 100% a safety net that needs to be there, 100%. But there also needs to be another section with that, like maybe like enough messaging that, hey, if you ever get into a situation where it's real crisis and you don't want to talk about it, these are the steps you can do for yourself. Like, we don't have a lot of that out there. A lot of it's reach out for help, but not everyone wants to do that. Not everyone really can. They're not capable of doing it.
Yeah. The desperation, Craig, and how to what you're saying reminds me of your final comments in the film, Craig. Craig, as we look back, and I want to transition a little bit to our, normally we do an over-under trivia question, but today it's just a simple trivia question. Craig, one of the things that helped you move forward was being a part of Hold Steel Crown.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, it is.
A new rock band in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So our trivia question for today, John Draper, and Craig, in over-under style, you just simply get to say he's right or he's wrong. That's it.
Okay.
So Cold Steel Crown was around, you guys published your album. Life Sentence was the top song on your album, Craig?
Yes.
In what year? 2000, 2001?
I think it was 2002, I want to say.
Yeah, okay. So in 2002, John, if you're looking at new rock bands, who was the top? It wasn't Cold Steel Crown. Cold Steel Crown was like fifth. Top. But who was number one in the world in 2002?
In 2002. Yeah. I mean, Craig Cold Steel Crown was the would-be king of emo, but emo. I mean, Gaslight Anthem was the biggest thing that was happening in emo back then. But emo was not the number one seller. And I am, oh gosh. This is post grunge. And are we talking about bands or pop act?
Band. I searched for the top NU-rock band in 2002.
Well, this was right around the time U2 came out with Beautiful Day, and so I'm going to say U2.
U2. Would U2 be the answer, Craig? Yes or no?
And I want to say no.
Craig, do you have a guess at who it would be?
Probably at that time, KOD or Chevelle or something.
Pop rock band? Oh my God!
New metal band. Yeah, the new
metal. Now you're saying new metal band. That's
so. Craig, tell me if you agree with this answer from the robot.
Yeah.
They say Linkin Park.
Oh yeah, of course, yes, yeah. I didn't know they would be considered new, but yeah, they would be. I thought they were way before that.
Well, that was the question. Is a new band? Is that what you're saying?
NU. So what does NU mean, Craig?
New metal. It's new metal. It was like a new generation of heavy metal that was kind of somewhere between rock and somewhere between metal.
Yeah, I thought it was just saying number one band.
Yeah. So John, part of the problem is you and I didn't even understand the question.
Yeah, that's right. But Craig got it. Yeah.
Craig was in there. So, Craig, let's jump into this discussion together. And storytelling has been such a key part of your life and your recovery. Tell us a little bit about how you figured out that storytelling was your thing.
Oh boy, I guess you could go on without going too deep down a rabbit hole. It started with lyrics for sure.
Yeah,
that's what I did. I was obsessed with listening to the lyrics and of songs. I loved music. I love songs. When I was in 8th grade, I had a notebook, like a 5-subject notebook, and I would sit in class. I wasn't very strong in school for a number of reasons, but I would write the lyrics to Pink Floyd The Wall over and over and over and over, finish it, start it again, and just keep writing. And then I would go to another album, but The Wall filled up that whole notebook. And I just loved it. I loved the way it was structured and the stories that they told. And then I just kept going and going. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write lyrics that people related to. I wanted to write things that made people feel the way I felt when I read someone else's thing, that like said something that I was feeling but couldn't express, and they did it for me. And then eventually I got to the point where I was like in my 30s. I was just turned 30, and I was like, I'm gonna write a book, and that was it.
Yeah, it's not just that you're a storyteller, but you're the bold will to use the kind of brutal honesty that you do about your situation. Roger Waters with The Wall was talking about experiences a lot of people would have, but it wasn't saying this is my story.
Right.
You showed so much. I think that's one of the things that moves all of us, is how deeply you were able to go into your own story. And I wondered, after doing that for so long, how did telling your story in so many public settings that moved people, and people were saying, I can't wait for this guy to move me. How did that affect you doing all that?
I think you got to the point of when you said, how can't wait for this guy to move me. That when I started, I used to do it when I first started. I would leave feeling a million times better about myself. I would feel so valued, and I'd feel like I created value for myself, and I helped other people, and the response was great, and it was very strong and everything. And I had to you've seen me speak every time. I give absolutely everything I can to the whole thing. And when I'm done, I'm exhausted in 1,000 different ways. And it got to the point after 10 years where my story isn't changing, right? It's the past. I was trying to draft different ways of saying it. But to me, I was losing the heart behind it, because I had said it so many times, I'd done it so many times, and I got to the point where it was like, I have to remember that these people haven't heard it before. But then I started speaking at a lot of events where there were a lot of people in the audience who had heard me before. And that kind of was like, I would leave there feeling more and more empty and less fulfilled, if that means anything. And by the last several years, and I didn't pay attention to that. I still like gave it everything,
barreling ahead.
Yeah. But then in the last 2 years, I get diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, like shut everything down. I mean, that changed everything. And I continued to speak, but I was forgetting words. I was forgetting my point. I was definitely not the guy that people were saying, you have to go see him speak. You have to listen to him. Like, I know that pressure's on me. That's why they hired me. That's what they expect. And I'd go to give them that, and it just wasn't coming out of me the way it did before. And on top of that, I'm sinking into a very deep depression from the MS. Biologically, as I'm a strong fighter with that, and I know my place and I know how to manage it. But it was, I without getting off topic, it was, I thought I knew depression my whole life, enough to be a national public speaker about the subject. This was darkness. So I'm trying to speak, and that's happening, and my cognitive abilities are feel like obviously degrading. I can feel it myself. I can see it myself, and then it'd come back, and I'd be okay, and then I wouldn't, and I'm forgetting things, and so I'm leaving these talks feeling like I'm only giving them 10%, and I'm ruining myself, and I'm ruining their opportunity to hear something better and something more important, and it got heavy. And then at the end, I'm giving talks, and I'm feeling that way, and trying to still play the part and not bring anyone down around me. And a lot of people were continuing, and I think this goes for all of us and anyone who speaks. A lot of people connect with you, and when they connect with you, they want to talk to you, and when they talk to you, sometimes they give you every bit of pain that they're holding on to, and they hug it into you and cry it into you. And so I'm in that place, and I'm having a lot of those moments, and it was, I was like, okay, I have to stop this now. I have to stop this and focus on me. And I did exactly what we all tell everyone else. I had to put myself first, and I shut down I mean, you guys know what I was doing and potentially where I could have taken it if I wanted to. And I knew that in order to be well and get to a better place of wellness than I ever was before, because that was my goal. Like, I'm going to fix this once and for all. If I was going to do that, I had to disconnect myself from suicide prevention work and speaking and all the stuff that goes along with that, and focus only on me.
What an incredible story. I mean, again, that's, while you're telling your old story, a new story is bubbling up underneath that requires attention for you to really see, like, where is this going? And it could have gone a lot of different ways, Craig. And to hear you say, feeling kind of trapped in this situation, so many people counting on you, you've been suicidal before. Instead, you say, I've got to take care of myself. I've got to do whatever it takes and commit myself to getting better. Tell me about that decision and how hard that was.
Oh, it was very, very hard. I mean, think of, like, that was my passion, like speaking and everything, connecting with the passion, value, my purpose. It really was what made all my pain worth it. Was like, it culminated to this successful thing that I controlled completely. It was all in my hands. However I wanted to shape it and direct it. And like, what an incredibly satisfying feeling, and what an incredible opportunity that I'm well aware very few people get to experience, where you somehow have a reason for all of your pain, and it's valuable now. And you're like, wait, maybe it wasn't bad. That was a tough thing to break away from. But I mean, things got so bad at the end of last year. It was last year when I had to just stop. And my whole life with depression, I've gone up and down and up and down, and I pull myself out of it every time, and I'm strong, and I fight, and I'm proud of myself, and I do it, and I win. Except what was happening is I'd go down and then come up not as far, and down and come up not as far, and I continuously on this downward slope cycling through. And when I experienced the level of depression that I felt with the MS and major health issues going on all at the same time, I mean, my body started shutting down. My brain is shutting down. They don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm not as bad as I was. I improved, but during that process, I mean, so much was going on. I never experienced depression like that in all my life ever. And you yourselves could attest to how deep I've been, right?
Yeah.
So this was something all new and super powerful. So I was like, all right, this has to stop. I'm done. I'm not going to cycle through this again. I'm not going to let this happen. And so I disengaged from everything except my job and my family. All my work, all the things I do outside and little small business things, everything. Excuse me. And I focused only on me, and I went to the first step I went to a 6-week outpatient program, which is something I haven't done since I was 20 years old. Right. And imagine that one as a process, like me, the guy who, like fixes things, like, inspires and all right. But I practice what I preach. I have to, we have to.
Yeah.
And it was bad enough. And for my sake and for my family's sake, I had to,
So, Craig, when you and I talked a few months ago now, and you were sharing that you had stepped away from the work, and my first reaction was I was worried about you and wanted to see how you were doing. And you and I got on the phone together, and you were sharing how you had really catapulted forward from that decision. So hearing the sort of background and that flow makes a lot of sense, Craig, for you and your life. One question, as you're describing that, Craig, you're talking about some of the impact from MS and some of the impact from telling this story over the course of time. What advice or thought do you have for others who've gone out and made their impact through their stories? Is there a natural life cycle where this makes sense and is healthy and then it runs out? Or is it going to vary for every person? What do you think, Craig?
I think for me, I think it's different I would have to assume it's different for everybody. But for me, I think what I exhausted was the phase of my life that I was stuck in. I was keeping myself in a part of my life from all of the experiences I went through that led up to my attempt, what I did to overcome that, and how I want to move forward. It's great talk, right? It's a great thing, but that's one big thing. And I lived that thing every time I told that story. I mean, again, you see me speak, I live it. It's all there when I'm talking,
there.
And when I leave, it's all there. So as healthy as I was with it, it was not the right thing. If I were to continue, and I may when the dust settles and I get to where I want to be, that's not the story I'm telling anymore. That's done. That's like, that's like, call that my first record, right? Like I toured, the tour, we did a 10-year tour with the first record, right? So that's basically what I did.
Away from the road sometimes, Craig.
I gotta say, when you were talking about, people are expecting me to tell this story. I kept thinking, this is what musicians say about, I got to just play my good songs over and over and over. I got to put it out there because they haven't heard them yet, perhaps. But, my God, I want to move on.
Yeah. And that's where, and I have over 2,000 notes in my phone on all the things I've done, all the things I've been doing and all the things I've done, all the insights I've gained, all the progress I made and how I did it, and why I did it. So there might be another book eventually about, this type of process, I guess. But I have no goals right now. And I am sincerely, when I say I'm focused on me, that's it. It doesn't get bigger than that. It's right here, right now, and that's it. I have no idea what tomorrow's going to happen.
Well, I got to ask you though, because you are very much in this process, and as David was saying, you catapulted forward. In this chapter of your life, what has been the catalyst for catapulting forward? What's been helping you?
So I started, I went into that 6-week outpatient program. And when I went into that, I sat down and was like, yeah, I need to do this. I want to do this. And I went in, man, I left with a notebook like this. Like I went in like I was trying to get my master's in all the classes they gave. And it was a pretty good place. And, I just absorbed as much information. I went there with the intent of, why do I do the things that I do? Why do I think the way I think? Why am my default behaviors the way they are? Like, what is the science behind it? What is the latest theories and research say about why we are the way we are, and what our behaviors are, and what our illnesses are, and how they manifest? Like, that's what I went there for. And it gave me that. It was awesome. It was so eye-opening on tons of levels. In fact, I got the book over there right now. And that got it started at the same time with my MS. And this is a big one. This is huge. With my MS, I had a major health problem earlier of last year, and probably around January, February of 23. And my blood pressure was staying at around 180s over 116 to 120. Heart rate was 116 in my sleep. And they kept telling me, you're just anxious. You're just anxious. And I'm like, I live in anxiety. This is not anxiety. And they give me medication and more medication. So without getting too deep, it's a pretty good story, but I don't want to side rail. And in the end, it ended up being a neuropsychiatrist who looks at, the neurologist and a psychiatrist, and looks at the damage in your brain and how it correlates to behavior and all that. And he's asking me all this stuff because they sent me to him because they said it was anxiety that had my blood pressure high for 3 months and nearly the heart attack level. And it turns out it was the medication that I was being prescribed through the MS clinic. So I was taking 21 prescription medications at that time in February of 23. And he's like, you need to stop taking these 2 particular ones right now. And then he checked with the head neurologist, and she came in. She's like, not only do I agree with Dr. Young, I think you need to throw them away. You should not be on that medication. And in 3 days, my blood pressure went to normal. Everything went back. My body went back to normal. Everything went back. And I was like, okay, I'm done with medication. I'm done with all the medication I take, everything for depression, anxiety, everything, because it served me and it's helped me, but it's never held me where I need to be. And having the scare that I had based on all the medication I was on, when I said to myself, I'm not going to go through this cycle again, what I felt like I had to do was find out what it's like to be me. I mean, I've been on medication since I was 15 years old for all kinds of stuff. I had 6 back surgeries in my life. I had surgeries in my wrists. Like everything you could imagine, it's been through me from prescription standpoint for 15 years. And I'm like, if I'm going to get better physically and especially mentally, that was way at the forefront, even way beyond the MS, was I have to know what it's like to be me. I have to go to zero. I have to feel who I am. And I spent 8-9 months tapering off of every medication I was prescribed. It went through absolute hell, like full-blown withdrawal nightmare, like the worst stuff I can tell you, full-blown absolute withdrawals.
Going through all of that and MS.
Yeah, and major depression, right? So it was a tough year, but I knew what I was getting into, and this is what I want to do, man. This was like boot camp to me. I'm like, I'm done. I'm so done. I can't express that strong enough. Like, I'm not going to live the rest of my life the way I've lived the first 48. Like, it's not going to work. So we're doing something. So I went through all that. I went through absolute hell. And then, once I was, and in the meantime, this is the other thing. In the meantime, I'm listening to a podcast, and I hear this guy talking about this gene break that up to 50% of the people in the world have, the MTHFR gene, which is responsible for the methylation cycle in our bodies.
Careful, Craig. Careful with the language.
MTHFR. Okay.
Yeah. You can easily turn that into what that is. And I'm just listening in the background. It's like I'm not even paying attention. And he's like, one of the key indicators is high homocysteine levels in your blood and low B12. And I had just had an MS fully checked head to toe, and I noticed I had high homocysteine and low B12. And I didn't even know what those were, but it stuck out to me. So I was, so then I listened to him, and it turns out this methylation cycle is responsible. If you have this gene break in the methylation cycle, the symptoms are often anxiety, depression, suicidal tendencies in life, OCD, everything, like everything. And I'm like, wait a minute, what?
Sorry.
What are we? Yeah, like what are we talking about? And then he starts getting into like deep into this, and so I look it up, and it's a real thing. So a lot of people, I'll tell you how it works. So there's a methylation cycle. There's like 5 genes in this process. MTHFR is the first one, so it's the most important one. And if you have a gene mutation there, then your body can't process folic acid of other things. But folic acid is a man-made chemical. It's sprayed on everything. It's sprayed on our grains, cereals. You see enriched flour, fortified flour. That means it's been sprayed with folic acid. And now in the ingredients, they're just putting flour, and at the bottom, they'll add in a separate folic acid. So they spray it on everything in the United States. Of course, not in Europe or Russia. It's against the law over there, but not here. So anyways, I won't go down that hole. So anyway, so if someone has this gene break and they're eating non-organic wheat products, which I grew up on my entire life. I mean, every cereal in the morning, all the sugar cereal, the Wonder Bread, and then pasta at night, everything. Like your body doesn't know what to do with that folic acid. It's trying to turn into folate, but it can't. So you're actually not giving your body the nutrients it needs to produce all the things it needs to be a functioning, a healthy human body, right? So a great analogy is it's like your car runs on gasoline. Gasoline is refined crude oil. If you took crude oil and suck it in your car, it's not going to work. You got to refine it first, right? Yep. So the methylation cycle within our bodies takes the energy from the foods we eat and converts it into usable energy. But if that process is broken and you're not getting folate and you're not getting B12, those are the things that you need in B9 too. Those are what you need to create things like serotonin and all the positive neurotransmitters. Yeah. So I could take SSRIs my entire life, and all it's going to do is ration what little I have, but because my body can't do anymore. So I'm listening to this whole thing, and I got deep into it. I started researching the hell out of it, and I'm like, I think I have this. I think this is what it is. And I got a gene test. I had to pay for it myself. I don't think insurance would cover it. In fact, I know my insurance wouldn't cover it. It was about $600. When I sent in my blood and it comes back, I have the gene mutation break from both of my parents. I inherited like the worst of the worst. So step 1 of the methylation cycle, it says my system runs at 0 to 10%. So up until 48 years of my life, I'm eating folic acid. I'm low on folate, high homocysteine, getting no folate, low on B12, all the things I need to have a functioning, healthy brain. By the way, this is also something that can lead to multiple sclerosis because it depletes the myelin. It doesn't give you the nutrients you need to build the myelin in your brain, right? So I find that I have this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, all right. Like, and literally the fix is you just take pre-methylated vitamins because your body can't do that part of it. So and you can take B12 all you want, but your body can't do anything with the B12 because it can't methylate. So they methylate the vitamins in a lab, and you just buy methylated vitamins.
You have a sense of dosage that you need to take, or
I take 2 a day, and I get my blood checked like crazy all the time now for my own sake, and I'm right where I need to be with 2 a day. I have normal B12, normal homocysteine levels. I've not taken any type of mental health medication. I've not needed to take any mental health medication since last year. And I sincerely, and I'm not attributing it all to this. Again, I threw the kitchen sink at my wellness. There's other things I did, but I've not, I can sincerely say from my heart, I've never been this well in my life. Never been this well all my good points in life have never been where I am right now.
So Craig, let's talk about that kitchen sink. One, you looked at the public speaking and the drain that was giving you as opposed to the push that it had earlier on, and you decided to let that go. Hard decision, but you did. You started going to this dedicated outpatient program, learning all that you could. You got a gene test, and that led you down a path of getting off of a lot of medication for physical health and mental health issues, and getting on getting your system stabilized.
Right.
Anything else you've done that you want to share with us that has helped?
Yeah. So the right around the same time I started, again, I knew that what I had been traditionally working with, talk therapy and traditional medication wasn't, for me personally, it wasn't enough. And that it kept me alive. It kept me going. It kept me functioning, but I didn't feel good enough, and I needed to feel good enough that I wanted to live the next 48 years of the rest of my life. And so I started hearing a lot about ketamine, and I did a ton of research before I went into it. What is it really about? The biggest thing I didn't want was to make me worse, because I looked at all the horror stories and was like, okay, well, I'm actually pretty good in that space. I'm a very, very deep thinker. I spend a lot of time in my thoughts and exploring my thoughts, and as deep as I can go. And it's actually a hobby, if you want to call it that. Right. So I'm good in that space. So I wasn't too worried like I'd have a bad experience, but could it do some damage? I mean, it literally is a disassociative. Yeah. And you're not in your body, you're not on Earth. And in the process, it creates neuroplasticity, which is everything I wanted. When I started through the hospital, learned about, how our brain is basically solidified by the time we're in it through our adolescence, and our behaviors are there, and our neural pathways are formed, and we're building highways, and those highways are getting stronger and easier to move. So if this situation happens, and this behavior is the easiest one for your brain to remember and connect to and go to, despite how bad that behavior is, it's just going to keep going there, because that's what you programmed it to do. Right. So things like ketamine and plant compounds are also can give you the opportunity to generate neuroplasticity, where you can reroute those roads and you can regrow that and retrain that. I got very, very interested in that, and I did a ton of research on it. Looked at tons of places around here that they had, all the way out from Boston to Maine down to Connecticut, and found a ketamine clinic. And this is a doctor. You go in and you sit in this chair, and there's heart monitors, and you have an IV, and they check everything. It's comfortable and it's safe, and they make you feel like you're having an experience, but it's a doctor's office, and it's IV ketamine, and the protocol for depression was eight sessions. So I did that, and I'll tell you, that is that's an experience. And I went into it like I've gained very, very strong control over the experience. Within like maybe 5 seconds of the IV starting, 5 to 10 seconds, you are no longer, for me, I'm not in the chair. I'm not, the only thing I can feel are my teeth with my tongue, but my being is everything. It's everything. There's no way, I become everything. And I've gotten to a point where I can literally explore that space, and I can drive the journey. And I've spent entire sessions where I just sit there and visualize my brain growing all new neural pathways, and thanking it for allowing me to work with it and do this, and like loving the pathways that were there and letting them go and letting them rest if they need to. Like, and I visualize this, and I don't even, when it's happening, like it's literally like an intense psychedelic experience, full disassociative. But for me, I'm in my heart. I'm in me, and I'm driving, and I'm rerouting, and I'm rethinking and reprocessing. And I take it very, very, very seriously. And I think if you do that, it can change things in ways like there's just nothing else that can change ways. Change like
that's what I'm wondering about, because that's a beautiful description of what it's like to be in that experience. And then when you drive back and that journey ends, and you've had this neuroplasticity experience where you've been able to reroute, what are you noticing is the difference in your experience afterwards? How do you notice differences in the way you think, the way you feel or act?
What I notice most is all the negative things. I say negative because they're things I don't want anymore. I don't want to think and feel this way. I don't want to act this way. I don't want to respond this way when someone upsets me, anything. I notice that more than anything. I have this intense awareness of those things because I ask for it. And then as soon as they happen, I redirect it. As soon as they happen, I visualize the experience I had when I was with ketamine, the things I learned, the insights I gained too, like incredible insights about myself and the people around me. But I use every opportunity, sometimes I bet you hundreds of times a day after, I will stop myself from thinking a certain way or stop myself from putting myself down. Everything. That's what I notice most. So it isn't just like you go through the session and you wake up and you come out and you feel good or whatever your experience might be. There's work to do after. There's a whole integration process where weeks you have to continue to work on this and be observant. And I do it where I literally take it for what it is. I ask the universe to show me everything I need to see in every moment, in everything I do, in every interaction I have. If there's any opportunity for me to see and learn from this, show it to me and let me see it. And the more you see it, the more you see it, the more it's there all around us, especially when you do it with the intent of trying to improve.
And Craig, what you're describing is a lot like what I've been hearing from people who've gone through psychedelic trials that are, intently for therapeutic purposes, which just makes it different from a recreational experience.
Right.
But I'm wondering how different are psychedelic trials the same kind of thing as ketamine? Are you aware of any differences?
Yeah, no. So there's a lot of stuff in the kitchen sink.
Okay.
So it was working. It's working. I'm improving and things are going. But again, literally, I mean it when I say it, that I became the most important thing and this had to be fixed or I'm not living the rest of my life the way I lived the first part. So that's it, So I sought out it following this neuroplasticity and looking into the research that's being done with psilocybin and MDMA, which is I think probably having experienced it, probably the best combination I could imagine. I know MAPS in Canada is doing a ton of research where they're building it around communities. It's like incredible work.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to find someone who, a therapist who works with psilocybin and MDMA and did a 3-day intensive trauma therapy session with me. And she gave me a psilocybin, which is going to open your mind, it's going to open your thoughts, it's going to bring you where whatever it needs to do. And MDMA, which in her words keeps it in love, and that's exactly what happened. Like it was all in love. There was no fear. There was nothing negative about it. And again, I went into it super serious. This is sacred. This is, I took it very, very seriously. This is not like hanging out with your buddies kind of thing. This is trying to change my life and change who I am and my spirit and my soul and my essence and everything I think I am. I want it to be better. And that was absolutely unbelievable. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. I can give you some examples. So when you have there's no word to describe it. It's not epiphany. It's not breakthrough. It's not insight. It is beyond description. It's like if you imagine a thought, a concept, an impression, an entirely different perspective, like really, really put the weight on what that means. Imagine if you could snap your fingers and suddenly, John, you could suddenly see everything the world looks like through David's eyes, his entire worldview with a snap of fingers, right? You wouldn't even know who you were, right? Think of that intense, starting from a little white dot and this is not the actual visual. This is just a metaphor I'm giving.
Right.
A little white dot of a thought of this perspective, this entirely different thing that suddenly explosively but beautifully and softly explodes into such an engulfing white light that you can't even find the source anymore. That's how intense and beautiful it is. And I saw in this session through the work that she was doing with me, like I have had intense fear my whole life, intense, irrational fear, afraid the house is going to burn down if I live. Just, it finds a way to manifest.
Yeah.
And it's sickening and it's debilitating. I mean, I've literally lived every waking hour of my life in some degree of fear. Always. It's been there. OCD took it over the top, but it's never gone away. And I learned in this session, and I say learned, I mean, I learned in a way that it is, I am not the person I was. That's how I learned. That's how much I've learned. That my fear kept me safe. My fear, when I was a kid, I didn't know what the hell was going to happen around the corner. I didn't know what home was going to be like. I didn't know if I looked at that kid wrong, he was going to punch me. I didn't know if all of a sudden my mom was going to have one too many drinks and the house would get trashed. Like I was scared of everything. And because I was, it kept me safe. It kept me off to the sidelines. It kept me quiet. It kept me, and for that, like I never saw it that way, that it protected me and loved me enough to keep me safe. And I never saw that because of that, I loved it for keeping me safe. And I held it close like a blanket. Like I kept that fear with me my whole life because it served me so well. This is my protector, despite the fact that it was killing me and I didn't need it anymore. And in this session, one of the sessions, it was 3 days. And I mean, she literally stayed in the room with me while I slept and everything. Like this woman was, it was the first time I can say I really understand what it means to hold space for someone. Yeah. And what it means to listen. Like listening is way beyond listening. You know, it's deep. It's processing and letting it go. It's wild. So I realized the first time that I can let this fear go and that it doesn't have to be with me, and I love it. And I think it was glad for me to do that. You know.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Craig,
that's one.
Yeah.
Just one.
Craig,
Yeah.
Craig, John used before we were meeting with you, John and I were thinking about how to shape the questions in the conversation. And John used the word unshackled as we've heard Craig, even before the program, talk about where he's at right now. And that's the word I hear, Craig, is getting to an entirely new world for you. Craig, what's next? So I hear where you're going, but I also know that lyrics and photos and writing and music, Terry Wise, of course, now is a photographer. She does, I think there's similar threads and themes, but she's not speaking, even though she's still one of the top videos on the AAS website. And her book's out there still impacting people's lives, but she's not doing that work anymore, but she's doing similar kinds of. Craig, what's next for you? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I don't have a great answer for you, unfortunately. I'll give you the true answer. Right now, it's just me.
Yeah.
I literally, I was just talking to a friend about this last week. Because he noticed, I don't have any passions right now. I mean, I had my fingers in everything. I was making knives, I was building I do stuff all the time, you know, trips across, like everything. I'm always going. And in the last year, this is it. This is what I do. I'm focused heavily on my health, heavily on my future, and not in the sense that I'm visualizing where I want to be, just that I want to be healthy when I'm there, I think. And it's just me, and I'm okay with that, which is odd because I've never been okay with not keeping busy.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm just chilling. I'm suffering a little, but I'm doing my work. Like this is I'm processing. I have new 2,000 notes. Like I have new insights on life and meaning and purpose and why.
Well, Craig,
how things are.
What I'm hearing you say is that why would I be thinking about the future? Because what's happening now in my present is so utterly revelatory. And things are happening for you in ways that you were utterly unimaginable.
Yeah.
before your MS, and certainly when you got your diagnosis, did you ever think you were going to feel this way? I'm, if you were to write, this is how it feels today, what would be your message in that volume?
Dude. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know yet.
So
Well,
I'm
Craig,
figuring it out.
here's what I feel, Craig. I feel it incredibly privileged that you spent this time with us and sharing
wow,
what you're doing right now and how that's working for you. I love it, my friend. And
I'm just, again, I'm so pleased that you included us in this chapter of your journey, and you're where you are right now, and you're still exploring, and it seems like every day that you're exploring is something new. So yeah, you can't write anything yet. You're writing about your process, but the fact that we could be a part of this, and Craig, I know you're stepping away and need to step away. You need to focus on yourself, and that's why I'm even more thankful that you stepped into our room today to share your experience, because I can tell you that what you're sharing right now is going to mean a whole lot to a whole lot of people. And you go back to your life and do what you need to do. But this moment, brother, let me tell you, makes a difference for people.
All right. Thank you, John.
so,
Thanks for having
John,
me, guys.
that brings us, Craig, John, to the incredibly true tales of behavioral health link.
I thought it would.
Yeah, well, it has,
It
John.
was a natural rejoinder, of course.
And John, I know this is going to be hard for you to imagine, but the incredibly true tales of BHL come all the way up into our present. And Dr. Chuck Browning, who's been our beloved chief medical officer
He is
at Recovery
unbelievable.
Innovations for 15 years.
Yeah.
Is now joining Behavioral Health Link as the chief executive officer and president.
That's a cool look, David. I got to say, Dr. Chuck looks very cool there.
So this is the incredibly true story. Is we did a strategic retreat at Dr. Chuck's North Carolina beach house back in the spring, and we had played some kind of interactive game where you were having to come up with these words. And so we were down at the beach, and he says, I'm going to use all those crazy words in a quick story. So this is, I actually got video for this incredibly true tale, John. You ready for it?
I guess. We'll see.
Here we go.
Putting it all together of the 5 words from about Buster Scruggs.
Let's hear it.
In tribute to Jerry. All right. So once I was a lowly reprobate, and I was in a picadillo about my speech. And then I attended the Jerry Sandusky David Covington School of Speech.
Yeah.
And now my sobriquet is AOE, or aficionado of elocution.
Were you able to understand any of that, guys?
I know he brought up you and Jerry Sandusky.
The TED Talk guru and Baltimore Ravens commentator.
Yeah, well, we'll have to. So we're looking forward to having Dr. Chuck on the program, John.
Yes, we are. Absolutely.
So, John, that brings us to some plain truth, and I've got some for today, John.
I'm ready to hear it, David.
So our discussion with Eduardo Vega in the podcast last week actually has launched a new segment in our weekly 988 Crisis Jam, John. As you know, we're calling it the Lived Experience Library. And one of the standout books is Craig's This Is How It Feels, which we've been talking about. But I'd like to take a moment to pay tribute to William Styron, whose courage made such a library of stories possible. He shattered the silence that surrounded suicide, tearing down the societal walls that have once kept people with lived experience inside a box and hidden away. But more than that, perhaps, Styron confronted what I think is a dangerous misconception that suicide only happens to other people. Anyone can be broken. I first heard this phrase 10 years ago in Somerset, Kentucky. It came from a Marine named Silouan Green, a tough man who once dismissed weakness until a fighter jet crash took his instructor's life, injured him, and altered his world forever. Too often, people who die by suicide are seen as the others, those who are vulnerable or weak. I've heard this echoed at suicide research conferences for over 20 years. There's near universal agreement that something sets these individuals apart. Though the debate rages on whether it's biological, genetic, psychological, or moral, let's call this mindset the vulnerability doctrine. But here's the reality. Even many experts struggle to understand the depths of suicidal despair because they lack their own lived experience. We comfort ourselves as humans by thinking, I made it through my dark times, why couldn't they? These attitudes have seeped into our culture and into our science. But let me propose another bold statement. Anyone can get cancer. Now, that's actually not that radical an idea today, but it was. Today, society has largely accepted that cancer can affect anyone, regardless of their strength, health, or their background. But this wasn't always the case. There was once a stigma, and cancer was seen as a disease of fate or even moral failing. But as knowledge grew, so did our understanding that cancer does not discriminate. The same must be understood about suicide. Even the strongest among us, people like Primo Levi, can fall. Levi was a symbol of human resilience, having survived Auschwitz, and he channeled that experience into his literary works of profound moral endurance. When he died in 1987, many scholars and his people who followed him refused to believe the police report that it was a suicide. He had, after all, embodied the triumph of the human spirit. Yet William Styron, in a 1989 lecture, argued that Levi's death was a suicide and was struck by how strongly people resisted this idea. As Styron put it, the pain of severe depression is quite unimaginable to those who have not suffered it, and it kills in many instances because its anguish can no longer be borne. Anyone can die of suicide. Styron introduced a new way of thinking. Let's call it the humanity doctrine. I'll give another example. The tragedy of 9/11 saw at least 200 people fall or jump to their deaths. These individuals weren't thinking about suicide that morning. They weren't weak or different. They were simply human beings thrust into unimaginable desperation. We often shape narratives about those who have died, and we don't give them the chance to share their truths because they're no longer with us. They've lost their battle. Styron dared to share his. Craig, thank you for sharing your experience and the kitchen sink you've thrown at your pain to find a way forward. It's mind-blowing, Craig. You're opening us up to a new world that we had hemmed away in the past. And you're also opening up, maybe you're not walking that exact path anymore, Craig, but others are now walking that path because of the steps that you have trod. Thank you to everyone who continues to share that light and helps make this entire experience more humane and more supported, more caring, and Craig, the word you used again and again, more loving for us all.
No, that's some plain truth, David. You know, what, Craig, it's not just about sharing and having the bold will to share your story about being suicidal, but the story of how you coped with it, how you challenged it, how you fought it, how you fought with it. And the story you're telling today is a new chapter in that. And I'm so glad you could share that with us today. And David, I think this has been a very special episode.
Yeah, me too, John.
Yeah. But that's it for us today. Craig, thank you as always. And stay cool, everybody else. Stay anchored and look out for the lifelines that we toss your way next week.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much.